Hello everyone and welcome to Clarity 16.0.3 Supportability and Feature Training. I am Vib Mehrotra, and in this section we will be talking about the customer enhancement. Specifically, we will be focusing on the technical components of those enhancements that are being introduced. So as part of this release, the following items have been added based on direct customer feedback or from the customer innovation panel. These items are ability to audit timesheet attributes, the auto assignment of time entry access rights that has been updated. The user management grid has now been introduced in the Modern UX as beta, and the action item APIs. These are all again directly from customer feedbacks and innovation calls. In addition to these, there are several other functional features that have been added to the product. Each one of these functional features will be covered in detail in their respective sections. These features are the attributes being able to display the range and description that is defined in the studio, the grid column wrapping, the export to PDF for the timeline in project task, the change rounding of risk impact and probability score, conversation module now available in master objects, investment timeline to honor business rules, the ability to copy roadmaps, and then the mobile app itself, the several enhancements that we got from customers. The reason this is important is, again, customers have engaged with the product management team via multiple channels, primarily the product management office hours, the roadmap review, or the customer innovation calls that we run on a monthly basis. Each one of these calls, we are able to interact directly with the customers, and customers that have been using the product for several years have provided direct feedback to the product management team, and based on those we have then addressed these items in the product itself. So let's get started with each one of these technical ones. The first one is the ability to audit timesheet attributes. This one came from the customer innovation panel. So what we are doing is, as part of 16.0.3, we are going to introduce timesheet as a studio object. Now keep in mind, unlike other studio object, the timesheet object will only have two capabilities. The first is the ability to define which attributes you want to audit, and second, be able to see the view access that has been defined for that object itself. This object, unlike others, will not allow the capability to define custom attributes. You can only consume the existing out-of-the-box attributes and audit them. Once the timesheet attributes have been enabled for audit, you can view the audit data just like the other object audit data in the same location, which is under the administration audit trail. Once you go there, you can see which object that have been enabled for audit, and timesheet should be listed there, and then you can see the actual data and the attributes just like other object attributes. So the audited data will be available under the global audit trail. As part of 16.0.3, we are changing how the auto assign rights of resource enter time is going to be managed. In the prior release, when a new user was created in the system, they would automatically be assigned the access right to enter time for themselves. However, granting that right would result in elevating their license type in Clarity to restricted. Customers obviously could go in manually and remove that access right to reduce the license type for that specific user down to just view only. However, that was a very tedious activity for an administrator, especially if a customer is trying to create several users in the system to just be able to view the data. Starting 16.0.3, we have made change it to that logic, and now we will no longer auto assign the right for resource enter time. This is only for newly created users. Existing user types will not be changed or modified as part of this release. The way the logic is going to change is that we will now tie the auto assigning of write, which is the resource enter time, directly to the ability for a given user to enter time in the system. This means that when a specific user is enabled to enter time, or open for time entry is the actual flag, when that open for time entry flag is checked, we will auto assign the resource enter time access right. At the same time, if that flag is unchecked, which means the user is no longer allowed to enter time, then we will automatically remove that access from that individual user. So this way now the auto assignment of the right is tied to the ability for a person to enter time or not, rather than always granting that access right. This new logic will be supported when changes are made either via classic UI, modern UX resource page, REST API, or Zog. Starting 16.0.3, we are now introducing the user grid in the modern UX. This user grid is going to be available under the administration section of modern UX and will be released as beta. This is because we know that we do not have all the functionalities in this user grid, so it'll be released as beta, and over the period of time we will add additional functionalities to this specific grid. Any user that has the access right of administration authorization will be able to access this new grid in the modern UX. New users module will use the common component grid, so all the common component grid functionality such as the export, the group by, and arranging the columns and so on will all be available in this. The grid will display all the users required attributes, and each one of those will be flagged with the asterisk next to them. The list of those attributes are on the screen that are available in the modern UX. Again, not every user attribute is going to be introduced, but only the ones that are introduced is listed on the screen. This grid will allow the administrator to manage the individual users' access user groups, which means they can add or remove a user from a user group within this grid itself. In 16.0.2, we introduced the action items in modern UX. Based on direct customer feedback and our partners' feedback, we are now introducing the action item APIs to be public starting this release. The APIs will provide the ability to view action items and be able to act on behalf of a specific user using these APIs. There are two specific endpoints that are going to be made available. The first one is the action items. The action item is a read-only, which allows a get call that will allow the person that is either writing the integration to be able to view the action item information. The action item assignees will allow the integration person to be able to see which specific assignees are tied to that specific action item that can act on that action item. The same endpoint, which is the action item assignee, can be used to perform an actual action against that action item, whether it is to approve, reject, or any other action that needs to be taken against that action item. Here's the full list of the different APIs and how you can make the several calls. I'm not going to read through each and every one, but you can essentially see the describe calls are available that will allow the person writing the integration or the automation to understand all the attributes that are available, as well as the type of calls that are available. Then there are samples as to how you can perform a read on an action item, samples on how you can read for just open action items, how to get the list of all the assignees for a specific action item, and then how to act on behalf of a specific user against a specific action item. So So again, these are available for your reference for writing the integrations or automations. All right, with that, let's see the product in action. So here I am in Clarity 16.0.3. I'm going to start off with the classic part of the application, and because I'm going to show you how to enable auditing for timesheets. So editing of the or enabling the auditing of a timesheet is done in the studio under objects. I can filter for timesheet, and now you can see that I have timesheet as an object available to me in the studio. When I go inside, as discussed earlier, there are only limited options available. I do not have attributes as a tab where I can add any additional attributes. I can only enable audit trail for existing attributes. So for demo purpose, I have already enabled auditing for several of the fields. Again, this is a standard Clarity functionality where coming into audit trail, you can add whichever attribute you want to audit. You can add the auditing whether something is changed or whether something is inserted or deleted. So all of those operations are available in here for audit trail purpose. Once the attributes are enabled, just like a standard functionality, we also have the purge audit trail, and we always recommend customers to enable a value in here. This is because you don't want your audit trail to grow too much. So you can set a specific day, which is the number of days after which the data should be purged. In my example, I'm purging my data after 90 days. But of course, based on whatever is the company standard, you can set the value here. Again, we highly recommend that when something is enabled for auditing, a certain number is set here so that older historical data after a certain number of days is deleted from the system. All right, now that I have enabled the audit trail for timesheet, let's see this in action. So I am going to log out as myself, which is the administrator, and I'm going to log in as one of the user that's going to enter time, which is Jerry. So I'm going to log into Modern UX as Jerry. I am going to go into the timesheet for this user, and when I go into this timesheet for this user, I have now the ability to enter timesheet for a specific task. So I can populate my timesheet. And again, this is standard functionality. I'm going to populate my timesheet with the task where I am assigned to. I'm going to populate certain time. And once I've done so, I can go ahead and submit this timesheet. The timesheet has been submitted. I can go ahead and log out as Jerry. And I'm going to now log in as myself as the administrator. I can go ahead and review the timesheet that has been submitted by Jerry. So I can see there is Jerry's timesheet that has been submitted. I can go ahead and approve this. Again, this is all standard functionality, but the flow is that once I have approved or even entered time, now I can go look at all this information in my audit trail. I can see who submitted Jerry's timesheet. I can see who approved Jerry's timesheet. So to do that, I'm going to go back into my classic UI. Of course, I could have created a page with the channel into the audit trail and then just see it within the Modern UX, or I can just come to the classic UI, and under here I can see the audit trail. In the global audit trail, I have now the option to see timesheet audited data. There are several information already here, but I can just say show me Jerry's data. And Here is all the data. I can see what was submitted. So in this case, Jason Berry had submitted the information, and I can see that it was approved by me. So all the information that I had enabled the audit for is available for me to see in the audit trail. All right. Next, let's look at the access right, the auto assign access right. In order to see that functionality, I am going to create a brand new user in the system. So I'm going to go into, again, the classic UI administration, and I'm going to go into users or resources to create a new user. I'm going to create this user as Joe Smith. So I've provided the necessary information needed for this specific user to be created. The rest of the information I'm just going to leave it as is. I'm going to go ahead and create this user. And once created, I'm not going to give any access right or any user group assignment to this user, because I want to see what access right does this person automatically gets. And to do that, I can come in here and I can see that there are no global access right assigned to this person. I can look at the instance rights, and the only instance right assigned is just the resource self and then the favorites menu. That's it. The time entry access right has not been assigned to this user at all. Now let's go enable this user for time entry. To do that, I'm going to go into the resource management, and I'm going to enable this user for time entry. So you can see by default when a user is created, they are not enabled for time entry. So I'm going to go ahead and check this flag. I'm going to say that they're going to enter the time in ppm, and I'm going to save and return. Now I can go back and check the access right for Joe Smith. And by doing so, now you can see that because this user was enabled for time entry, this user automatically got the resource enter time as the access right. If I go back and reset it, which is go back to their setting, the user setting, and remove the ability to enter time. So I'm going to turn off that. I'm going to save. And now if I go back and check again this user, I can see that that right, the resource enter time, has been removed. So it is granted based on that flag being checked and removed based on that flag being unchecked. All right. Next, let's go to our modern UX. And in here, we are going to look at the new user grid that is being available. So if I go into the modern UX and go into the administration for modern UX, I can see that there is a new tile that is available to me, which is called users. Clicking on that, I can see all the users that have been defined in the system. I can see all the columns that are available for me to edit, including their locale, language, status, email, username, and so on. All of this information is available for me to modify as an administrator. And one of the attribute that is available is the user group. This is the attribute that I can use to modify the specific user's user group itself. So let's find our newly created user, which is going to be Joe Smith. And there he is. Double clicking, I can see by default Joe Smith is only assigned to the basic access group. And I can say, well, Joe Smith is supposed to have all the access right of a PMO team member. I can just search for it and select that. And now Joe has both of those access rights, the basic one as well as the PMO team member. Because this is using a common grid functionality, I have the views, so I can easily view the data based on other informations. I can see all the different resources across the different locale. I have the ability to export this data out. Again, for that I have to be outside of the group by, and now I can export this data to CSV, which again gives me a lot of flexibility and capability to be able to manage the users from modern UX. All right. The last piece that I wanted to cover for the demo is the action item APIs. Now, to see the action item APIs, first I'm going to go into just my default page, and as you know, in last release we introduced the ability to view action items in modern UX. So right now I don't have any open action items for myself, so I'm going to go ahead to a specific project, and in that project I'm going to invoke an action item. Again, this is all existing functionality, so I'm going to invoke for cloud computing compliance. I am going to invoke the stage gate process. The process has been enabled behind the scenes, and because I am one of the approver, I can now see that action item is available for me to act on. The three actions that I have available to me are approved, rejected, and approved with condition. If I look at the other tabs, I can see that there are previous action items that I've already acted on, and the action items is closed. So that information is available. Now let's look at the APIs themselves. Of course, the APIs can be leveraged using any automation tool. In my case, I am using Postman to show you how the different API calls can be used. There are a few set of API calls that I'm going to do, and in Postman I have the ability to define parameters. So these are going to be my parameters that I will be leveraging as we go throughout the demo. So the first one that I'm going to do is the describe call against action items. This describe call tells me which all attributes are available, and it tells me that the only method that's available is a get. So I can use this endpoint to read action item information, and it tells me all the different attributes that are available as part of this call. The second call I'm going to make is the describe to the action item assignee. That gives me the information that I can do a put, get, and a patch call for against a specific assignee on a specific action item. The attributes that are available to me again are listed in the describe, which gives me all the information that I need to know. If I do a get call against action items, and I specify specific attributes I want to read for all the action items, then I can make that call. And again, the list of attributes that I can use was in the describe. So in my case, I'm going to read the subject, description, priority, and so on, all of these attributes that I want to read for all action items. And I can do that, and I see these are all the action items that are available. Of course, because I said I did not give a filter criteria, it's also giving me the closed ones. So you saw that there were several closed ones. All of those are now listed in here because I'm reading all of them. If I wanted to just get the open only action items, I can make a call to action items, and I can filter for the status equals open. And when I do that, I get only one action item that is open, and that action item ID is this one right here. So I'm going to copy this for my variable. I'm going to populate that here so that all the future ones I will make call against this specific. So let's continue on. Now if I want to get the specific action item details, I can make a call to the action item, and using my variable, I make a call, and I can see that there is an open action item for the specific project, which is the cloud computing. That's the one I invoked it. The three actions available to me is open, approve, approved, rejected, and approve with condition. And it was created by myself and all the information related to it. I can also make a call for specific, again, the open action items with the specific attributes. And that gives me just the specific attributes that I'm looking for, which is the associate instance name, the status. So it's a little bit more cleaner to look at as to what all I need. The next API call would be is for that specific action item, I want to get a list of all the assignees. And I can again, once I run this, I can see that there are about 4 assignees that are tied for this action item. I can verify this if I go back to Clarity and I go to my open. I can see that there are 4 specific assignee. Expanding that, it gives me the names for each one of those. Now at this point, we don't throw the name of that specific one, so we would have to make a call for each one of these to know exactly which assignee is tied to this specific user. In my case, I know that it's this specific ID that is tied to my specific name, but I can again make a call for each one, or I can verify that this is the specific ID that is tied to my name. So I can take this information, I can populate that in my variable, and once done so, I can then come in here and now make a call for the action item and pass the assignee ID. And when I do that, I can see that this is the action item that is tied to my ID. And at this point, if I'm ready to make the approval, I can go ahead and make a patch call to the action items with the action item assignee in it. And the message I'm going to pass is assignee status approved. Once the call is successful, we can go ahead and verify in Clarity that the specific one is now approved. For the cloud computing compliance, it is approved. If I go back to open, there is nothing in here because that action has been approved using the API. This concludes the section. Thank you everyone for listening.